Hello everybody, this is Brian O'Haron, back for another version of Getting Things Done, which features problems and people in town that are trying to fix them and trying to get things done. Tonight, I'd like to show you this little quotation from our new town manager, Wayne Dove, probably 25% into his first 2 years now with this group. Let's hope he makes it through the next 2 years after that. But he's made there's a quotation in the paper. Most of the quotations I use and most of the information I get out of the papers comes from Waterbury Republican, because I personally think out of the three local papers that they're the most objective and have more balance. It's kind of the one I read. Also, my wife does the puzzle in there every day, so I buy it for her to do the puzzle. This is going to be really hard work, said Wayne Dove, town manager, the town of Winchester. This is going to be really hard work. And what he's talking about is the situation we have with the town of Winchester Public Schools. So I'm going to be talking about that tonight, mainly trying to present the problem to you, and a few comments of my own on it. But this program tonight, I hope to make a tribute to Wayne Dove, because as I said in my other programs, he's certainly a man and a town manager who has the background, the experience, the education, the personal fortitude, the personal characteristics that we need in this town to get things done. And he is showing a lot of signs of getting things done. And as a result, most of the community that I talk to, and I talk to a lot of people every week, like Wayne Dove and think he's doing the right thing for the community, and that he has the town's interests at the forefront, that he will do what's best for the town and lead the town in a direction that's best for the town, providing he's not micromanaged too much by the minority that's in control of the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance right now. So, the town of Winchester Public School, K through 12, kindergarten through the 12th grade, long-standing problem. Whenever I talk to anybody about this, and I've been studying it now for 5 or 6 years, they all say, Brian, this is not news, this problem. It's been around for years and years and years. So we have a kind of a Tower of Babel here in this town when it comes to dealing with the public school, not only the costs, but also with the test scores and with duplication of efforts, triplication of efforts between the school systems and the town. So a lot of that is going to be discussed here tonight. The perception that major Winchester organizations are not cooperatively planning the present and the future of the town's education system is prevalent. Almost everybody understands that this is a problem. Most everybody understands that it's been around for a long period of time. Most everybody understands that there are many people in town who think it's a problem and they have a solution for it. The problem is there are probably 10 or 20 different solutions for it. In one way or another, we have to come up with one integrated solution that will be best for our town and our students. This perception, as I said, has been around for many years, but has recently been brought to the forefront by a few things. One is a decreasing number of students in our school system. That's diminishing. People don't have 9 children anymore. They have 1 or 2 or 3. And I think the average that I've heard around is like 0.9 per family nowadays. Average. We have questionable test scores. I'm not going to debate that tonight, but over the last few years, everybody's been talking about the questionable test scores. Some people think they're improving, some people think they aren't, some people think they're improving too slow, some people think they're improving at a rapid rate, some people blame the other people, and other people blame the other people, and we keep going, but in general, we probably don't have the most competitive test scores by the students in our school for many, many reasons. The rising cost of education. Over the 100 years, that's put a little dent in the Gilbert trust, money. We've had a lot of rising cost of education, so it's getting more and more expensive. My son just signed up for 2 years of a master's degree program in business in Ann Arbor at the University of Michigan. $120,000 for 2 years. And since he is working and has a good job, it will all come from his pocket. So I hear a lot of people tell me nowadays it's $40,000, $50,000 to get people through good schools. So everything is rising. And as a result, of course, as you know, being here in Winsted, the schools like we have in our town for the first 2 years of college are attracting more and more students because they're less expensive and people can live at home, and so that population is increasing now. Other people are going to schools closer to home that will cost them and the parents less money. The recent recession and its after effects have been a real problem for our town and for our state and for our country and for our world. Now, I have said on the program in the last few weeks that as a troubleshooter and a businessman, we do try to take advantage of these situations to hone our own system. Things we should have been doing all along in the good years, should have been fixing, become more outstanding now and more, they draw a lot of attention. And that's what's happening in Winsted right now. A lot of the things that we didn't do over the years, or that we did do over the years, are forced out into the open by this recession. And if people don't pay taxes because they're laid off, especially the people on Wall Street in New York where they make big bucks and pay big taxes, then that all filters down to us. Now the federal government has stepped in, as you know, and has helped, but that's only temporary. And unless we're careful, it will create more problems for the long term than it has solved in the short term, may have solved in the short term, although it doesn't look like it's really solved any problems here in this town. The expiration of the Gilbert School's latest contract. 2 contracts ago was a 10-year contract with the Gilbert School. We contract to do our high school education for the majority of our high school students in the town of Winchester. The last one, I'm pretty sure, was 3 years, and it's up in a matter of days. at the end of this month. And we still don't have an agreement, although we're working towards it, or a contract for next year or for the following years. And that's all part of this discussion we'll be talking a little bit about tonight. Now, my own view on this contract as a businessman is it should have been done a year ago. Not blaming anyway, I'm just saying that's what I would do. I would make sure that a year, year and a half, maybe 2 years before the contract is up, that we have an agreement for the following contract. And that all the battles are fought way in advance of the due date, which is the end of this June. So that's made matters a little more what I would call political than they should be. And there's a lot of, I didn't put it on this list, but there's a lot of politics getting in the way of this whole thing all over town. Touch a bit more on that later. So we got to get that contract done in a fair way for all parties. The kind of rule on contracts that I've been talking about on this program for many years now, 3 or 4 years, and I've talked about it in my education courses around the world whenever I gave these kind of courses to people and my own employees and all, is that every contract should be fair. It should be, everybody should win in this contract, in these contracts. And if you start out with a contract that isn't fair for the people that enter into it, then you're in trouble, because you're going to have a problem sooner or later. So, and then the other advice I was given by Phil Fellows, who I featured on this program a couple of years ago, was once the contract's done, Brian, put it in the bottom drawer and forget about it, and work together as partners to carry through and make it work. Just because you have a contract doesn't mean it'll work. You have to work together. Everybody has to work together to make contracts work. So this contract with the Board of Education needs to be finished in a fair manner. I kind of, there are many ways to approach this now. And there are people who favor remaining with Gilbert forever. There are people who favor remaining with Gilbert for a certain length of time while we work out some new working arrangements with them. There are people who favor never working with Gilbert again. There are people who favor sending all our children to various other towns for their education when they get to that level of their schooling. I'll give you one example of how that's happened in our past before tonight. There are people who want to take one of the existing elementary schools and make them into the high school. There are people who want Gilbert to give us their school. There are people who want Gilbert to sell us their school. And it just goes on and on and on. So there are probably 10 or 20 different, there are people who want to do a whole new school, 100 million or so, K through 12, and put it up on one of the properties around town. That'd be tough, because we don't have any money, and the state has got a lot of grant money for this kind of thing right now. Over a long period of time, that's probably going to happen sooner or later, but it's a tough one for now. So we've got all these ingredients in this stew we're working with for the public schools in Winchester. Now I want to talk a little bit about the chartered responsibilities that people have, for all of you who don't study the charter and don't read it as much as others do, and for those who ignore it and you know, paraphrase it with their own thoughts. And we'll start out with the selectmen and the Board of Finance. They're the same 7 people. I don't think we have the greatest group, because I think we should have on a finance board people who have been accountants, businessmen, and people who are used to dealing with finance, like Wayne Dove. That's the kind of people I think we should have on there. Now, they won't be all of that caliber. And if you just go to Torrington, you'll find that most of the people on their finance board will have that kind of a background and understand the need for financial control in a town. So the selectmen Board of Finance are responsible for presenting a budget to the annual town budget meeting where it can be reduced but not increased by the attendees. I've been to several of those. Going to one is like sticking a knife in your leg, but I've been to several of them. Don't go anymore because they tend to be repetitious after you've been to a few of them. But anyway, that's what they're responsible for. So when you read in the paper, like I did in the last few days, that this is your responsibility, Board of Education, to decide what you want to do to solve this problem, that's not totally true. Because whatever they do must be affordable. And the way our charter defines affordable is that the selectmen must first recommend it to the annual town budget meeting, where they can increase or decrease it but not increase it, and then they can elect to go to a town referendum. The selectmen / Board of Finance, and I always like to look at the budget issues of the selectmen as the Board of Finance rather than the policy issues which are in the selectmen area, but they're the same seven, and they wear different hats even though some of them aren't qualified to do so. But the Board of Selectmen / Finance Board are responsible for accepting or rejecting the bottom line of the annual Board of Education budget. That's power. That means they have a lot to say in any approach that the Board of Education wants to take to educate our children, we the taxpayers. So they have a very, very strong say in there. The Board of Education does not have the final say. They have a lot of power and they can do a lot of planning, but in the end, the Board of Selectmen / Finance Board can cut their budget, not necessarily change their approach, but a cut in budget might change their approach like we're going through now in this whole situation. So that's a very powerful thing, and I want to make sure you understand that. Don't just believe what you read in the newspapers about this. This is a team effort between the Selectmen, the Board of Finance, the Board of Education, the state, sometimes the feds, and anybody who is contracted to help us with this problem, and the taxpayers themselves, some of whom are represented by the Winchester Taxpayers Association. So anyway, that's what the bottom line of the annual Board of Education budget, prior to sending the recommended budget to the annual town budget meeting for approval or rejection at the annual town budget referendum, where eligible voters approve or deny the proposed annual Town of Winchester budget. Now, as you know, sometimes we go through 7 cycles of this, which then really makes it tough on everybody in the town and in the schools and on the taxpayers and everybody else. So, a lot of power there. I don't think everyone understands that from what I read in the paper. Now, what about the Board of Education itself? Again, we're talking about chartered things here. If you want to know more, you can read the charter or go talk to the town leaders. The Board of Education is responsible for coordinating the production of the proposed annual Town of Winchester education budget. Now, this is an area that's very confusing to many people because when they talk about it, they say the selectmen have cut our budget, or the selectmen are cutting our budget, or the Taxpayers Association is forcing us to cut our budget, or the referendum has agreed and they've cut our budget. Well, that's not the fact. The fact is, it's just a proposed budget until it's approved by the annual referendum by the taxpayers. And that word proposed often gets left out when we discuss cuts to, that, for example, this year's annual budget. I guess the Board of Education is looking like 1.2 million, and they're getting there. They're going to have to lay off teachers and make people part-time and drop this and drop that. But that's to their proposed budget. So the Board of Education is responsible for coordinating the production of the proposed annual Town of Winchester education budget for submission to the Board of Selectmen / Finance Board, who then takes and makes their decisions and passes it on, or tells them to go and sharpen their pencil and come back again. And that's what you see each year, where if the selectmen give them a target and they come in over the target, then they say, well, go back. Now, for example, this year I think there was a whispered target of about 2.5% increase, and they came in with a 10% increase, so they sent them back to the drawing board, and they're still at the drawing board because they've already agreed the 3.1% tax increase, but they got a lot of cutting to do to be able to meet that target. Now the town manager, well, what's he responsible for? Or she someday, when we did have a woman here when I first came back. I guess we have had several women, I don't know, but I know we had at least one. The town manager is responsible for submitting the annual Town of Winchester proposed town budget to the Board of Selectmen / Board of Finance. So they coordinate the production of this with Gilbert and with any other subcontractors, bus companies, whatever they have to do to put together a budget, so they get to the point where they have a proposed budget, and they give it to the Board of Selectmen, who then takes the ball and carries it from there or sends it back to them for rework. And there are dates involved in this. You'll see that if you read the charter. Okay, so I wanted to delineate those responsibilities for you, because it's the Board of Education, it's not Gilbert, it's the Board of Education that's responsible for putting together this education proposed budget. And they work with Gilbert on that, and they work either within or they try to get exceptions to the contract that they have in place with Gilbert. Now, who are the major players here? And I don't have all of them here. It'll probably take me a month to figure it all out, and I got other things to do too. But we've got the Board of Selectmen Finance Board, very, very, very powerful and key. We've got, I'm sorry, I hope I said the Board of Selectmen / Finance Board. We have the Board of Education, and they're made up of elected officials, both of these boards, who may or may not have any experience in the field of education. And they may or may not have any business experience. And one of the things that I find interesting is that the Town of Winchester is a business. Just look at it and see the incorporated sign on there. It's kind of a not-for-profit business. All the profits poured back into the business, if any ever is made, which never is, but the state we're at. And the biggest part of our budget, 65%, is the school system. So I've always said, hey, wouldn't it be nice to have a business person head up the Board of Education, and as many business people as possible on the Board of Education. Not all business people. You need some educators as well. But there needs to be a balance. And right now, and since I've been back, It hasn't been balanced, and it's getting a little more balanced now with Kathy O'Brien there because she does have business experience. She's a lawyer, had to run a law practice. She also has education experience, being involved in the schools. We have other people there too that have had their own business, and others who haven't. The Gilbert School, they're a major player here, because they have a contract with our town. They have a 105-year or so history of dealing with our town. They've gone through a lot of rough times with this, but the William L. Gilbert Endowment is the reason they're here. Things have changed over the years, but that's how it all got started. And I can remember when I was a child, and I knew a lot of people. I used to play a lot of sports up here with people from Gilbert. And it was a very highly respected school, still probably is, and noted for its discipline, noted for its good education, and its no-nonsense approach to education at that time. Now, that was a long time ago. I graduated from high school in 1956, so lots happened since then. Not all a problem of either the town or them. I mean, there's been a lot of government mandates. There's been a whole change in the way education works over the years, and there's been a change in the way families behave over the years and what their priorities are. There's been a change in the divorce rate over the years. All kinds of things end up affecting these schools. Same with K through 8, not just Gilbert. So Gilbert is a very important major player with a long history in dealing with our town over the years. There is the Gilbert School Corporation Board, is what I meant to say. That's the corporation board. They're the ones who run the schools on a daily basis. And they pick people from the town to be on that board. You or I could be on that board if we have the right qualifications, and I don't know what the qualifications are, but okay. The superintendent of schools, K through 8, very important major player, because he represents the K through 8 schools, and he has the accountant reporting to him, who's responsible for all the education budget and where it stands and what needs to be done to keep it in control. And then another one I put on here, I could probably find more, or you can probably find more. I'm sure somebody will call me and say, you forgot this guy, you forgot that lady. But the public, the people who have children going to the school, whether they be taxpayers or not. And the people who don't have any children going to school like me, but who are taxpayers. So the public is very vocal in this town, usually because they either have children in the school system and they really want a good education of those kids, which you can't blame them for that. And they don't really know a lot about the financing. A lot of the people who have children in the school system, they're busy getting on with their life. They've delegated that to the Board of Education and our selectmen and the superintendents and people like that. Gilbert serves, and you most know this, but I'm going to say it for those who don't, Gilbert serves as the town of Winchester High School by a negotiated contract with the Board of Education. Now, there are concerns with both K through 8 and Gilbert across the board in the public school education in this town. One of the concerns is the cost, the escalation of the costs for probably 100 different various reasons. There used to be people who said, and they maybe still do say, that most educators think that the answer to a good education is more money. Well, that may be true and it may not be true. There are an equal number of people who say no, It's not more money, it's spending the money you have more wisely. So there's two different sides to that story. The test scores, if you ever get into a test score discussion with anybody from the town, you'll get all kinds of views on why the test scores aren't better. You'll get some views saying they're getting better, but not fast enough. You'll have views where, hey, they're getting better fast enough. And it goes on and on. So I'm not here to adjudicate that. I'm just saying to you that the Tower of Babel, everybody's speaks a different language with a different answer, and none of them really understand each other because they're pretty well rooted in their own philosophies and views. I have been criticized by some people for saying, well, he never talks to me. Well, I've learned over the years that if people aren't in receive mode, as much as they are in send mode, it's not much good to talk to. Why waste time? Let's talk to the people that receive as well as send, and spend all our time doing that. And that's what we need to do here. All of us that are involved in this need to listen more, talk less, and try to understand these. That's why for the last 5 years I've been trying to study the town. Everything's coming in. Little goes out, of course, on these programs, but most comes in to me from everybody in town of all disciplines, shapes, sizes, colors, etc. Another argument is not enough Board of Education participation on the Gilbert Board of Directors. I think we have 3 on there now, and Heartland has 1, and Gilbert has the rest. And Heartland's in the minority, but we are in a minority of 4 of that board. So that's been a big. We pay most of the money and don't have a balanced representation on the board. And Gilbert has said that they'd be willing to put another person on the board once Heartland leaves, blah, blah, blah. But that's all part of this thing that people are squabbling about all the time. There's not an equal sharing in proposed budget cuts by Gilbert. I say Gilbert because they're our high school, so no sense talking about a different one. So when we get a cut in a proposed budget, Gilbert may or may not contribute to that. But they don't have to contribute to that. But as a team player and a partner, they often do. And sometimes they probably can't because they don't have unlimited funds there. Gilbert was endowed by William L. Gilbert in around 1895 or soon after. It gets a little confusing back there. He endowed it, and then it took a few years to get the school going and all that. I'm not an expert on Gilbert, but if you talk to somebody who knows a lot about Gilbert, you can probably get a better answer there. But Gilbert was providing free education for the first 50 years or so until the endowment began to become, I use the word was substantially depleted. That came for many reasons. It came because over time, inflation was more, the cost of education was more than they could make on the money they had invested, which often happens. Hard to make any money on invested money in today's environment as well. They contributed towards $3.5 million towards the new Gilbert School. And when the Region 7 was put in around 1958, many schools didn't come here to Gilbert anymore, and they went off to Region 7 and left us with just Heartland and Winchester to run the Gilbert School. That was constructed to run for more people. The participation of these people, I say for many years, Gilbert was used by New Hartford. I shouldn't have a comma there, but New Hartford, Barkhamsted, Colebrook, Norfolk, Heartland, and Winchester. the number I know. There may be another one or two along the way. If you know them, let me know, and I'll put it on the list. The participation of these other schools helped to defray the costs at Gilbert. When they went to Region 7, Gilbert took a hit. We, the taxpayers, had to pick up the expense when those people went to Region 7. I'm sure there was some cost cutting done. I'm not sure, I wasn't here then, but in 1958, Regional School number 7 opened, leaving just Heartland, once 100 students plus or so, and Winchester. And as I understand it, they were paying at that point about 20% or so of the cost of Gilbert. Heartland, over the years, has introduced their own voucher system, and their participation at our school, Gilbert, has now been reduced to about 8 to 10 students, and that's just Brian's number. It could be more or less, but it's in that ballpark. And from what I hear, it's on its way to 0 over the years. So those are some of the reasons why that money was depleted. They still contribute $150,000 a year or so to our cost of education in town, which is not much at all compared to what the taxpayers pay. And they do give gifts and scholarships, and from their endowment. They just gave, I saw in the paper today, $31,000 or $2,000 to the town of Winchester. So they're trying, and but they can only do what they can do. They don't have any big windfall going into the endowment now. Perhaps when one of you heads for the pearly gates, you can leave some money to this endowment. Might help a little in the long run. The Winchester Public Schools, K through 12, are mostly funded by the town of Winchester and the taxpayers of the state of Connecticut. I think the state of Connecticut gives us roughly $6 million a year towards our $20 million of education costs. So they're involved. There are people who would like to see them give us more. The more they give us, the more we get hurt when they can't give it to us anymore. So we're kind of in a catch-22 situation there. Something to be very careful. I've always been a proponent of earning the money ourselves to be able to pay as much as possible ourselves. So when we have these recessions and things, we're not as affected as bad as we have been in the last year or two. I don't know how that's going to go in the future. There are some groups who are saying we want more from the state. We want more from the federal government. That'll also mean more mandates, believe you me. If they do that, which some people think are good and some people don't think are good. Depends on where you sit. Now, the Gilbert School was originally private, but that status was changed in the early 90s. I don't think a lot of people know this. After state legislation created 2 corporations. A Gilbert Trust Corporation to protect the assets of W.L. Gilbert. That's the school, the property, and whatever's left in the endowment itself. And they set up a Gilbert School Corporation, which they call the board, that's the one I talked about earlier, to run the school on a day-to-day basis. And if this group wants money from the Gilbert Trust people, the endowment people, they have to go knock on their door, I'm sure. I don't know exactly how that works, but I'm sure that they have to go and get that money when requested by either the town or the Board of Education, or whenever they feel they want to contribute or they should contribute. For many years, about 50 years, Gilbert was free to the town of Winchester, as I said. And currently, there are only a few Heartland students, so Winchester now bears about 98, 99% of the Gilbert cost. And that's just a rough approximation. And remember, they will get money back from the state to help with that, to help bear that cost. With the recent demands on the K through 8 education budget and the Gilbert contract about to expire in a matter of days, the priority of resolving disagreements has increased. There are many disagreements now about what this contract should be. Should it be 1 year or 10 years? Should we move 7th and 8th grade to Gilbert over the next year or two, or should we not? Should we go out to other towns and try to find a home for our students? Other towns in the area. And that was being pursued until a week or so ago. It's been put on hold for a while. But there are a lot of options that people think they have here. But I personally think, as I said earlier in the program, that when you negotiate with your partners, good businessmen always try to do things in advance in a fair manner. And sometimes the way we do it does not smack as being quick enough or in a fair manner. I couldn't think of this happening over what's been happening over the last few months is not good for anybody in the town of Winchester. Superintendents of the school district and Gilbert have worked with the town manager. I thought, after meeting with both of the superintendents of the school district and Gilbert for a few weeks to no avail, the town manager, with the backing of the selectmen, the Board of Education, 4-3, and the Gilbert school leaders, our town manager has now taken the reins of the school problem resolution, which I think is wonderful. I've talked about it in previous programs. You saw them. It looks like he's done what he said he was going to do. He took the problem to the selectmen and the Board of Finance. And there was a meeting on Monday, June 14th, 2010, where the Board of Education voted 4-3, notice that's not unanimous, 4-3, to postpone a study of alternatives for our education system, future, even near future, for next year. And in this year, to a certain extent, next year and the following years. To postpone a study of alternatives to Gilbert until October, which is sensible, 2010. It's about 3 months. To give the town manager, notice that this doesn't say to give the Board of Education or to give the selectmen or to give the finance board or to give the superintendents. It says to give the town manager time to work with all those people. That's very important. He's just going to be like the band leader, the orchestra leader, because that's what his experience is. That's what he's good at. He's apolitical in this situation. Doesn't have an axe to grind. So give this town manager time to work on a model for a K through 12 system, because up to now we haven't been able to do that. Still got too many differences of opinion. Too many people who want to do opposing approaches to resolving the same problem. Some which are probably feasible. No doubt that one way or another we can come up with a feasible model. Just getting everybody to agree to it, that's what the town manager is going to have to work on for a K-12 system for the town of Winchester. So the Board of Education, 4-3, agreed with this delay. I would have liked it better if it said the Board of Education has asked for this delay. And I do think at least one or two people on the Board of Education were pushing for this delay. Thanks to them. So now we've got 3 months. Now, the wonderful thing that's happened is, as well as putting in this good, well-practiced, well-educated, local native businessman to get in and try to help us resolve this problem as an orchestra leader. This orchestra leader has set a timetable. I always call them objectives, but a timetable is what the paper said. I say objectives to achieve the goal of achieving a model for the K-12 system by the beginning of the 2011-2012 school year. So that's the goal. Let's go. Let's get it done. Whatever we have to do. Now here's what the objectives were. Establish a K-12, that's kindergarten through senior year of high school, governance model by October 2010. Let's together all do that by October 2010. We all have to work as a team. We have to resolve our differences. There'll be a lot of closed-door meetings. There'll be a lot of yelling and screaming behind closed doors and twisting of arms and pulling of legs and whatever has to happen here to get people to understand, if they're listening, and agree together on this governance model. Staffing to achieve this in place by December 2010. Financials by March 2011. Facilities organized by April, whichever way they're going to go. Maybe we'll be up in New Zealand with our high school children by then. Who knows? But whatever comes out here has to be organized. It's more likely we'll be very close by, but you never know. So the facilities have to be organized, and that's always a pushback is, well, we can't organize facilities quick enough. We can't get there that fast. We got to go slower. And sometimes that kind of an approach is used by people who don't really want to go there in the first place. All right, so there's a date by which we have to achieve that, and it's measurable. I can come on TV on these dates and say, yeah, we made it, or we didn't make it, or we fell short a bit, or we overran a little bit. And then the next one is move ready by June 2011. June. So that means we'll be ready for that following school year. So I really have to commend this town manager, because this is not really his responsibility. It looks to me, and I'm just giving you my view, like he's doing it because it has to be done, like any good businessman would. And that it's 65% of our budget. And that if it isn't resolved, the areas that he's responsible for as CEO of our town are affected. Because the money has to come from somewhere. So this is very interesting. I'm tickled pink to be here saying this. This is why I started this program, to highlight these kind of issues where people, this is a problem that's been around for many years, and it looks like we are coming to grips with it. It looks like together with the selectmen, the finance board, the Board of Education, the superintendents, the Gilbert School, and any other schools that are going to be in our jurisdiction here, or that we're going to give vouchers for, or whatever, are all going to be in agreement, hopefully by 2011. Now, I couldn't say more about this. This is management by objectives. It's a man who's going to try to orchestrate the success here. And I want to show you once again the slide I showed at the beginning of the program. The town manager's the last sentence of the Waterbury Republican article I read, and again I commend them for being fair on their, very fair on their in their reporting. According to the town manager, and I agree with him wholeheartedly, this is going to be really hard work for all. And with that, I'm going to close a bit early tonight because this program will be repeated over the next 3 weeks or so, and I want to leave some time so I can come on and tell you if any major activity has taken place over the next 3 weeks or so. With that, I thank you. Good luck, town manager. Good luck, everybody else that's going to be working towards this solution of this problem. Try to turn into listening mode, receive mode, at least a good part of the time. Try not to be political. Try just to identify the problem as a business problem, absolute value of, and put together a plan together as a team that you can all stand behind. And we'll put you all at the head of the parade when we have our pep parade next year to wave, and for everybody can say thank you to you as a team. Thank you very much.